Okay. Again, welcome everybody. This is the third session of the IPP Open Bar trainings. Today we are going to look at modeling data inside a business process. We're going to just explore the various options for representing data inside a workflow, inside a business process. We're going to look at creating primitives, which are just text fields or numeric fields as single objects, and we're also going to look at the more interesting types that are called structured data, which have an internal nested structure to them. And lastly, we're also going to look a little bit at how to represent documents inside the business process. Before I jump into the web modeler, can I ask everybody to make sure that they have their phones on mute? That would be nice so that we don't have any disturbances in the recording. I sometimes hear a little bit of background noise. Thanks very much. Without any further ado, I want to start with the wiki page where you typically find the open bar invites and the WebEx link and so on. And at the bottom, you always find for every session a link to create a clone of the solution that we're seeing today so that you can play around with it yourself.
Jan, this is Raghu. I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you stop because I can't see anything on your screen share?
No, that is you're probably right.
There you go.
Thanks for reminding me. That would have been a disaster. All right. This is the wiki page where you typically go to find the open bar sessions, and at the bottom you see for every session, first of all, a link where you can create a copy of the solution we're seeing today. This copy will be your own. You need to register for a team before you can do so. And all of this is explained on this page. What's new, and I encourage everybody to take at least a look at it, is a video that is linked right here, directly under the training units provided by Raghu, that explains step by step how to go about creating a solution or a copy of the solution for yourself and how to deploy it so you end up with a runtime instance to actually execute processes. For the demo, we have basically a sample solution that we're going to look at and work with, and we also have, from this solution, created a runtime instance, which is also available through this link on the right side. When you do create your solution, you will be redirected to a portal, which is this one right here, where you would log in. And again, you will see this all in the video that is linked on the wiki page. Now, I, of course, am a member of a lot of teams, so I see a lot of solutions, but you can see here, for example, how already for the open bar trainings, people have created copies to play around with, and this is the demo solution that we're going to look at today. Inside this solution, there is just a single default release. When I click on it, the release contains a single process model, and clicking on the process model opens the web modeler that we have seen in previous sessions of the open bar trainings. So I just wanted to give you that introduction for those people who want to explore this a little bit further outside of these sessions and create these clones, and also to give an introduction to the UI that you will be working with when doing so. So I have created pretty much an empty model right now. I have 3 processes that we're going to run to showcase the different data types. One for primitive data, one for structured data, and one for documents. I have not created any data so far because this is so straightforward. I wanted to do this live with you instead of preparing something. So when you're inside, when you're modeling a process flow with certain activities and let's say a sequential flow of steps, you always need a context for this process, which is represented by data objects. This can be for an account opening. You need information about the person who filled out the application, or the account number later on. Everything, all the data gives the process that you run, the instance that you run, really meaning. It gives a context. So that context can be business objects that I just mentioned, account information, but it can also be just auxiliary data that you use to steer the process. For example, if in the process flow you have an approval step and you need to store the decision, then you need some sort of data object to persist the approved or not approved decision that was made at some point to maybe later decide in the process flow if you want to go left or right. So that's the main reason why actually data is one of the first things that I start thinking about when designing a process. There is a number of predefined data in the process model already when you create a new one. The driver's license, of course, is not one of those. I'll come to that in a little bit. But you can see just some built-in data objects right here. Creating data object is just like with most of the other things that we looked at before, done by navigating the tree structure, and the section that says data, you would do a right click, which opens a context menu, and you can see your different options for primitive data, document, or structured data. Let's start with primitive data. So I click on create primitive data. You can see a new entry right here. I can edit the name right away, or I can edit the name later. When I click on the object, the tab opens, and I can edit the name right here. Why not stay with the example I had given before? Let's say you know that there is going to be an approval step, and you need to capture the decision whether something was approved or not. So I call this data object approved. Always a good thing to leave a description in any case so that you later on remember what this data was used for. Just an example. Not much to do here except really deciding on a type. What is the primitive type? I mentioned text already. This is pretty straightforward in my opinion. Approved can only be yes or no, so this is a true false. A data object, but you can see as well we have numbers of different lengths, date and time, or a scientific precision, so the 1.0453 would be represented with this type. So we choose Boolean in this case. Default value, by not checking this, that means the default value is false. I save my model over here on the left side. That gives me one data object to use. Let's create another one. Again, right-click on the data section, create primitive, and this could be call it full name, and I'm really just making things up here. So this is the default type is always text, so this is already correct. I save my model. So you see, for every single primitive, I get one object here in the outline view on the left side. I have approved. I have full name so far. To use them, let me go into my process diagram over here for primitive data, where I have just created a manual trigger and one activity where I want to use these. This is a manual activity that creates an auto-generated screen. To use data, simply drag and drop by holding with the left mouse button and drop the objects that you need in your process onto the canvas. So I have approved, I have full name, and by hovering over each object, you can see the flyout menu. So most of you have probably seen this already. So I'm hovering over this object, or when I'm approaching it, the flyout menu opens, and I can connect with the arrow to the activity. This is covered, or what these flows actually mean, or the potential to configure here is covered in a different open bar session. Right now, you only need to know that you need to connect the data objects to the steps in the process, to the activities where the data is being used. And because in this case we have a user form that needs to be populated, so there is the flow of data is an input and an output, because we are populating the form with whatever the full name has been saved as or has been persisted, and also when the user leaves the form, we want to save the current state of the data. So we have a flow between the IPP process and the screen. That should suffice for now. So I'm doing the same thing here for the approved. Mark it as input and output, and you can see there is a double arrow now. So I can save this. Let's take a quick look at it. I am going back to my portal, or the portal where I can manage the solution from where I opened the process model. And there's another view that is important here, because I already have a runtime instance where this solution is deployed. I can navigate to this by going to the instances overview. I am finding it. I thought it's always at the bottom. Give me a second. Oh, there it is. Data modeling. Right here is my runtime instance. When you log in, you will not see that many entries. So this is my runtime instance, and I can select it by clicking on the entry in the table and upgrading it from here. Click on upgrade. It notices that there is only one release, so I select it, click on update, and this pushes the changes that I just did in the model into the runtime instance, so that when I now go to the instance, this is the same link as on the OpenBar wiki page. So there's only one user here, which is the Master of the Universe administrator. When I log on with that, you can see my 3 processes. I click on the one that we just created with the primitive data. And you can see the result of the drag and drop of the data objects onto the canvas and connecting it to this activity gives me a simple auto-generated screen for me to put in my name. And you can see that because the approved data object was of type Boolean with a true-false decision, I automatically get a checkbox here so I can say approved. This data is not being used right now except in this screen, but that's all that we want to demo in this session, how to create and use data objects. So this already concludes the primitive data part. Let me go back to the process modeler and to my model. I'm going to close these tabs. Let's look at structured data. Structured data is the most, or our preferred way of modeling data objects that have a certain level of complexity, because structured data can have an internal fields and an internal nested structure. So, for example, I can create a type, and this is important to understand, that structured data is based just like internally on XML schemas, so that for those of you who know XML schemas, you create a definition, a blueprint of the structure first, and then you can create one or more instances of that structure. So what we need to do for structured types is we don't directly create the object under the data section. We first need to define the structure. So I can do this by right-clicking on the structured types entry on the left, create a data type, call this address type. I'm going a little bit faster here now. I hope this makes all sense. I'm creating a couple of fields. An address type would have something like street, city, zip code. The two first ones are text-based, and the zip code is typically a number. You can specify cardinality if you have which would give you a list object. So if I have 0 or more or 1 or more, this creates a list of objects. In this case, that doesn't make too much sense. There's a lot of additional properties here that influence how the field is rendered on the UI when you use the automatic rendering capabilities of IPP. There's not enough time in this session to really explore all of this, so we might have another one that goes into detail here. Let me continue by creating one more structure. I would call this a person type. But here we have typical things like first name, last name, and then here, and this is where I want to show you the nesting capabilities, the address is a field inside the data structure for a person. So first name, last name obviously are text fields, and now hold on, let me save this and reopen it one more time. So I'm sure that I have a refreshed view here of everything, because now you can see other structure types show up in my selection here. I can tell right now that inside a structured object for a person with first name, last name, there is an address which contains the nested structure for the address type that I just created. Maybe I've been doing this too long, but to me this seems all pretty straightforward. So let me continue here. After creating these structures, there's nothing more that I need to do here unless I change the structure. So this is a one-time setup here under structure types. One thing that I want to mention because it's very important, and a lot of times people or organizations already have their data models defined in the form of XML schemas. So what you can actually do is import schemas here. So you don't need, you have the capabilities as I just showed to create structures from scratch. If you find yourself in a situation where you have existing XML schemas, they can be imported, which might save a lot of time. And they can be imported from a public URL. So if there is a public HTTP URL where these schemas are available, which is the case for a lot of industry standards. Otherwise, you can also package these XSDs within your solution and then refer to them basically on a local path. So that if you have I have nothing uploaded here, but if you have an XSD packaged in your solution, you can load your structures from this XSD by specifying a path like this. Just want to mention it, that these capabilities exist. We, for this session, have chosen to just create the structures ourselves. As I said, this is just a blueprint. Now, in order to really use these structures, I need a real object that follows the structure. So what I do right here, now I right-click again on data, and now I create a structured data object. And the top-level object that would make sense for me to have in my business process is a person. You notice that I, for myself, just follow a certain convention just to be able to distinguish more easily the structure. I have called a person type. So I just append type to every structure type so I can easily see that this is just the structure definition, and then the actual object would be called person in my case. After creating the person object, I need to select which structure definition does this object follow. And in this case, of course, I choose the person type that I have created before. I hope this makes sense. Now to use it, same thing. Let me choose the process over here on the left side called structured data. Again, I have just a single activity where I want to use the data. In order to do so, I drag and drop the person object onto the canvas. I use the flyout menu to connect it, define it as input and output to the web form, save, and now the whole round trip starts again. Because I've changed my model, I need to go to my solution instance, which is the data modeling. It is still selected. I think this is my browser or the Chrome, because it is, at least on my screen right now, very hard to see that the row is actually selected. I don't know if this looks different for you guys. I'll look into this. I remember that the line selection was actually much more pronounced when I tested this yesterday. Be it as it may, I have my solution instance selected. I can click on the upgrade button. Maybe it's not selected. I don't know if it looks the same for you. I have a very light blue shimmer here that tells me that this row is selected. And I might have in I don't know if I've been logged out. Bear with me, please. I am just refreshing this view by logging out real quick. Here's my open bar training instance upgrade. Here we go. So push the model changes into this solution instance. And then I can click right here. This on the left side is the link to the solution instance. Ha. Hold on. Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong one. Log in. Let's run a process with structured data. Now you can see how this auto-generated screen takes the information from my structure that I have a person object, first name, last name, and inside the person object, there's a slight indentation here. There is an address. By even the zip code, you can see it has a limited number of fields, so I cannot enter more than this. And if I enter text and try to save this, it also knows that we specified the zip code to be numeric, so I get an error right here. So the information from the structure is used, and this is one example where it is used to also validate the input. So I put in a number, I am able to save it. All right, let's continue. The last thing that I want to show you is, there are actually two things that I still wanted to show you. There's never enough time in this half hour. Going back to my solution real quick, opening the model. One thing that is very important, and this is very powerful because under the structured types, I can not only create these large nested structures, there's another structured type that you can see here. Once you have the type definition, you can create an enumeration. Extremely powerful. If I, for example, would create an enumeration called states enumeration, give it just a few values here, Florida, New York, what else do we have? California, just a few examples. Save this. So, of course, you can see how you can extend this to an arbitrary length. Now I could add this to my address type, for example, to create another field called state, and say this field is defined by my state's enumeration. So I can see here the possible selections. This generates, and I save it, see if we can quickly push it into the runtime environment. We'll see that in a second, because you will see it generates automatically generates a drop-down. So this is a very cool way to easily create some UI that is already very functional. The last thing, and here again we have the structure types come in very handy, very important. I have created a structure type here for driver's license metadata. You can see I can have just for maybe indexing documents, you can use structured data as well. So I can create a structure with just two fields, for example, license number and the expiration date. One is a numeric, one is a date field. Then I can create a data object, just like before, right-click on data. The third option we were going to look at is the create document. I've already done this. I have a document here that I called driver's license. And the document type, you can see here, this is where I have used the structure definition defined earlier called driver's license metadata type. And then I have used this data object of type document in my process flow right here. And you can see I have a step where I require the user to upload a document. Same thing, drag and drop the data object connected via the flyout menu right here, double arrow, save it. And this has already been deployed, so let's take a look at that as well. First of all, a quick change here for structured data. I'm going to create a new process. Remember the change that we just did with the address type and the enumeration. So when I create a new structured process, now I have an additional field called state, and here is my selection from the enumeration. So I think that is pretty neat. That concludes looking at the structure types. So we looked at creating nested structures, and I showed you how to create enumerations. The last thing I want to demo is the flow for the documents. Remember the model right here, single step upload documents, and the driver's license document is attached with the metadata. So when I execute this process for documents, I end up in the upload documents activity. I have a single entry for the driver's license and actually a link auto-generated here for me to provide the driver's license. So this is a process flow where at this step, somebody needs to, has the opportunity to upload a document, then it's as easy as connecting the document object to the activity as shown in the diagram. Now I get a dialog. Click on choose file. I have a driver's license, folder. There's a driver's license, upload. And here you can see where, because I attached the driver's license metadata structure to the document, I get additional fields here to fill out, which is actually indexing information that I could potentially search documents by. So this goes into this. Oh, sorry. This is, of course, just a license number and an expiration date. And then I can complete this. And this uploaded the document into my into the document repository actually, and the license number and expiration date are now available as index data to conduct or to potentially conduct searches directly in the document repository. I only went 6 minutes over. I'm quite happy with that. Let's spend the last 10 minutes. I'm going to open the floor for any comments or questions, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, if I have documents in Visual Paradigm, process documents like this, can I import them into IPP or?
So the document repository component that is connected here is a third-party product that we ship with IPP that is called Jackrabbit. So it's its own document repository. If you already have an existing document repository, there is just technically the possibility to connect it, but the IPP requires you to, or this document repository needs a certain API. So we only support at this point the built-in document repository with IPP for you to use this functionality and to have basically documents be a part of the process flow like I have shown. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use an existing document repository to, for example, push documents at the end of a process. You would use it just like any other external system that you need to connect to as part of the process flow by looking at the maybe the web services or other interfaces that this this repository provides to interact with. But you would not be able to interact with, for example, like I showed you, with the auto-generated screen.
Okay.
Do you have a concrete example for a client or a use case where this document repository exists?
Well, currently I'm just using Visual Paradigm and then using the Teamwork server to basically upload and share the charts that I have so far. And at this point, I wanted to see if I can get these into IPP over here, but at this point, I'm not sure. So I have to figure out the place.
So this is Andreas. I think, Jan, we are talking about here, please correct me, but Visual Paradigm is also a modeling tool, right? And you have some process diagrams created in Visual Paradigm, and you want to use them in the IPP modeler. Is that the question?
Yeah, that was the question basically. I wanted to import or upload or.
Yeah. So we have. So we have an converting tool. This should also be available here in this environment. I'm not quite sure at the moment how to access it, but I can, of course, look it up and let you know. Yeah? But there is a converting tool that would allow you to import BPM2 models you created in Visual Paradigm, and then you will, or you can reuse them, use them, or extend them from within our browser modeler here. Yeah? But it's not. What should I say? I mean, it always depends, of course, what is used or what has been used, what kind of model elements have been used. Yeah, because we concentrated on supporting the most used elements, so to say. Yeah. But I will let you know how to do this, and then we can just have a look what exactly is the outcome in importing those models into this environment here.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Keith, forget what I said earlier. I completely misunderstood your question. I thought you wanted to store documents, like a Word document inside IPP. You're talking about importing the diagrams.
Correct.
Thanks for clarifying, Andreas.
Yeah, that's basically what I was looking at. I'm basically trying to see if I can use the diagrams I have now in IPP.
Yeah. So
okay.
I have a question, please.
Go ahead.
Is there a way to view the documents within the repository from the IPP portal?
Yes, and I accidentally clicked on the complete button. What I should have done here is when I upload, I'm executing another instance here. When I upload the driver's license, for example, there is built-in viewing capabilities. So when right here, I just uploaded the document, saved the activity instead of moving the process forward, and so this is the uploaded document right here. So you have to look at the documentation again. Obviously, anything like a PNG, a JPEG, or any other graphical image can be viewed directly because we're inside the browser already. Then we have a built-in viewer for TIFF images, and that's by TIFF I mean the TIFF, so that typically come from a scanner that can have annotations on it and stuff like that. And then for anything else, it really depends on your browser plugin. If you, for example, have PDFs and your browser has a viewing plugin, then of course they can be viewed. But or Word documents as well. But we don't have a built-in viewer for Word documents, for example. So when you upload a Word document, click on it, the browser would ask you, do you want to save it? You have a typical dialog, open it or save it.
All right, thank you.
I think Anoop is on the call. Did I say that correctly with the PDF? That for PDFs we don't have anything built in, right? It requires just a browser plugin.
No, actually. So for PDFs on the server side, we render them as PNGs, and what you'll get on the client will be just a PNG of that individual page.
Oh, right. I forgot. Yes, we stream those.
Correct. So if you have a multi-page PDF, we have a custom viewer that lets you paginate across individual PNGs that are streamed from the server.
Perfect.
So you do not require Adobe or any other browser-side plugin at all.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
We're approaching the end of the session. Any other questions? Maybe it helps if I just really summarize what we saw today real quick. So what this session was supposed to cover, and I hope you got this out of it, is the main types for modeling in IPP are, or they should cover everything you need, are primitive types that are just single values, a single string, a single number. A lot of times, just from my experience, I find that these primitives end up being just auxiliary data that has nothing to do with the business data. So from my experience, usually I end up with, in pretty much every project, there are existing XML schemas that define the complexity of all the business objects, like what fields does an account have, or a person, or stuff like that, and we import them directly from the XML schema. And then anything beyond that that I need in the process flow to say, okay, was something approved or not? Any other data than that is created directly in the process model, and very often these are just modeled as primitives. And beyond the distinction primitive data, structured data, we also saw the document type and how that can be used to represent document attachments to the process. What else? Well, and of course, enumerations and how you create the structure type. So this is one of the things that are not immediately learned, that you just have to remember. When you use structures, there's a distinction between the definition of the structure, the blueprint, that you need to create separately and maintain separately from the actual object, like the person here, that is then based on this structure. All right. As long as nobody jumps up and has any more questions, I would like to thank everybody for attending. Hope you got something out of it. The recordings and the links to this solution are all on the wiki page shortly, so please come back and check that out. Thanks, everybody. Have a nice morning, afternoon, and evening.
Thank you. Bye.